3DS Max, welcome to the King of Catan episode. We have a very interesting board ahead of us. I see low ore and low wheat. Actually, the wheat, I don't think it can be any lower in terms of production value. A 2, a 12, and 3 and the 11. And the ore is also quite low, like there is a 9, 10, and 11. What type of board is it, and what do you think is the most important on this board?
Thanks for having me, first of all. It will be very interesting to see how they play around the scarcity of wheat overall. Various players have different strategies, but I think grabbing piles with ore and wheat early will be definitely important, but also balancing that with high production to overcome that scarcity will be very important. So I think those are going to be the two main strategies that people will use, without mentioning the more obvious ones like using specialized ports, or being on both of the wheat tiles, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I agree with that. I was definitely going to mention using specialized ports and also using 3-for-1 ports with high production. That seems to be like the overall best strategy on low or low wheat boards. Like you can like it's really interesting if one of the two is low and one of them is high, then you have a really interesting board usually. On these types of boards, it's really get an alternative way of getting those resources is usually the most effective from my experience, and it seems like you share that experience, don't you?
For sure, 100%.
Okay.
All the high-level guys that you ever talk to, they will stress the importance of production in these type of boards for sure.
So, what do you think should be the first pick made by Aspencer on this board?
Should is such a difficult word in Catan. Definitely grabbing the wheat and ore early will be important, simply because it will not. Chances are it will not come back to you. There are very few spots that have both, and it's very unlikely that either one of those spots is going to be available later. So the things like 8-3-10, 6-3-11 will for sure be gone. It's unlikely you'll get ore with an 9-10-5, for example, on the right-hand side. 8-10-3 probably would be a good first pick, a solid first pick, something that will let you play a fairly decent game, almost no matter what is left.
Yeah, that seems like would you point towards the 3-for-1 port to get the port out of it, or would you point towards the spot you expect to be open as well?
I doubt that 4-3-11 is open in almost any scenario, because either 4-3-11 gets taken itself or 6-3-11 gets taken. And the danger of pointing your arrow towards these brick combination tiles is that even though it might not be a great first placement or second placement for that matter, sometimes you'll see people being enticed into cutting you off just for the sake of slowing you down. Plus, since you're going to have so much wood, the 3-to-1 port on 8-5 is massive. It's effectively a settlement with 9 points of production, and you get a 3-to-1 port with an uncontested 3-for-1. It just has everything that you need to have a strong game later on. So I think pointing 3-to-1 is the best play without a question.
Okay, I really like it. There are also two other spots I'm definitely considering. One of them is the 5-9-10 at the right side of the map with the sheep, ore, and wood, and pointing towards the 3-for-1 port. I think it's a high producing spot, and you get by far the best. Well, you get the best ore. It's not by far the best, but it's definitely a good one. And I was also really considering, because like the ore and wheat is less relevant, it also makes development cards not necessarily less impactful, but there will be less of during the game because ore and wheat is harder to come on. And that's why I would consider the double brick spot at the bottom of the map with either the 10 or the 3 as a really strong spot as well. do you think there might be any consideration into taking especially the second spot with the 2 bricks I mentioned?
I think there is. So you have to be a little bit careful taking all of ore and all of wood kind of a spot early, because what you're essentially saying is that I know that a wheat and a sheep at the very least are going to be opened later, and that's not necessarily going to be the case. With sheep, you'll for sure have some. I don't see a scenario in which you don't. But it could be a little bit risky as first to just place on a super strong wood brick like that, given that you might get locked out of wheat at the very least, and perhaps out of ore and wheat at the absolute worst. So it could be a little bit tricky as a first placement. With 9, 5, 10, you're getting sheep and the best ore on the board. And you're probably maybe grabbing a mediocre wheat, but wheat here is so bad that it's almost not worth talking about. However, I do think that 9, 5, 10 is definitely another very viable first pick that could work with quite a bit of what's left at the end. Everybody has picked.
Okay, interesting. Let's see what Aspencer is gonna go with. Aspencer went with the 8, 10, 3 you suggested. Yeah. Seems like a really good spot. Potentially the best. I think it's a spot with a lot of potential, but there could be a scenario where someone places on the 8-5 with the 3-for-1 board. I've yet to cover a spot that works really well with it. Something could be like 9-for-11, but that's not necessarily what you want. So yeah, let's see. 3DS Max, where would you place your second settlement being Starshine here?
This is a tough one. When this game was played, of course, was back in December. The meta of the community has changed since then. But me, I generally gravitate towards something along the lines of 9, 5, 10 these days. I could definitely make a lot of arguments for 8, 4, 10 at this point, because you are going to be placing as second last and probably going to end up with a cheap spot as well as a mediocre wheat of support, like an 11 or a 2. So you won't necessarily need a ton of wheat later, and the 8, 4, 10 could give you that expansion opportunity with a 3-for-1 right there, which is really powerful for down the road kind of play. So to me, 9, 5, 10, 8, 4, 10 are both really good. Either one, you could probably make it work with what's left.
Yeah. Like 8 for 10 looks like a really strong spot, but I found one downside. Like either if you go with 8 for 10, you might be racing with the 9 for 3 if they decide that's more valuable than the 6, 9, 3, which they might, because brick is much more rare than sheep is on this board. So the second sheep number might not be worth it. There's also the wood port nearby, so if you place on the 8 for 10, point towards the 8, 3, then you have a 10 and a 3 of wood. So that's pretty nice to have in in a combination with a wood port. You could also go 8 for 3, point towards the 3-for-1 port, and then you'd have the risk of potentially racing with the 5 or 10. I'd say that's less likely because the 5, 9, 10 would lock out the 5, 4, 10. So my pick would probably be 8, 3, 4 towards the 3-for-1 port, or 5, 9, 10 towards the 3-for-1 port.
I think 3-for-1 is a must here. Given that you're going to be producing essentially, what is it, 8 points of brick to begin with, and later on brick is devalued and you have to convert it into something that's more useful, because eventually you will have to city up, unless you have an extremely lucky draw with development cards, but you can't really count on that. So I think 3-for-1 port is really valuable here. And if you're going to take a double brick spot, you're definitely you should be aiming most likely for 3-1.
Yeah.
No matter which one you take.
The reason I also think why the 8-4-3 is the second pick is because there are 2 or 3 cheap spots on the map, or technically 3, but the 9, 10, 11 will lock out the 10, 9, 2, so either of these will be picked. And there's also the 3, 6, 11 at the top, and technically there's also the 5, 9, 12. I don't see it being picked, but it could be the case that it's open. So they are really good combination spots with the 8-4-10. However, the risky thing is someone could place on the 3-6-11 and the 10-9-11 combined as a strategy. Do you think that could be the case? Do you think it's a risk to capitalize on that?
Essentially, one of the things that you kind of learn is that players that are acting after you, especially ones that are more quote-unquote thinking players or higher level players, and this lineup would fit that for sure, they will look at a way, and they'll find a way to try to hurt you. If you make slightly riskier placements and slightly riskier decisions, they will try to find a way to lock you out of the spot that you want. So you have to around that a little bit, and that's why you see so many players placing towards the coast and pointing towards the coast and getting to the ports is simply because they want to have a higher chance of winning regardless of what happens after them. And since Starshine, or Prinz der Sterne as he used to be known, not control what either YoungNaijah or the Leopard will do, I think taking huge risks might not be the best way to go here as second.
Okay, so where would you place?
I'm really honestly torn between 8-4-10 and 9-5-10. I think those are probably 2, but I could see arguments both ways. I could definitely see arguments.
Okay, I would go with, because the 6-5-11 is also on this board, I will go and the 2-9-10. No, 6-9-2. I mean, I will go with the 8-4-3. Let's see what Prinz der Sterne decides to do. Prinz der Sterne decided to go with the 8-4-10 over the 8-4-3. So this is less risky of someone placing on the 8-10 in combination with the 3-6-11, I assume. Do you like that?
It's a good pick. It's a really solid pick. It leaves him possibility to get all the resources. It leaves him the possibility of having a good expansion game, so picking up production with settlements instead of building cities early. And it still gives him the 3-1 port to convert any of those less valuable woods and bricks as the game progresses into what he needs for cities and development cards if he wants to go that route.
Yeah, my personal preference would be the 8-4-3, but I can see why it would be a bit more greedier, and it could also lead to players trying to play against you, as you will seemingly have a stronger setup than you would have by taking slightly less risk with this 8-4-10. Although it's a better initial starting spot. If you place on 8-4-3 and then get on the 8-10, you have a total more production if you go than if you would go with 8-4-10 and the 10 with the 3-for-1 board.
I think the good point that you made, a really good point, is that you don't want to make yourself look too strong with. That's something that people look out for, and could get yourself into a lot of trouble when everybody gangs up on you. I think making yourself look maybe a little bit weaker than you are is definitely something to be aware of. The table image is very, very important.
Yeah. Okay. So the third pick, we've made some comments on the 5-9-10. Would there be any spot you might consider as well overtaking the 5-9-10 here?
Maybe 6-3-11. Maybe. It's just that spot doesn't have any ports next to it, and you're giving up potentially the best ore with some interesting combinations that it goes with, something like 9-5-10, 9-4-3, end up being really strong. Although both of those, it's very difficult to know what players are thinking at the time, but I think grabbing the best ore is usually never the bad play, especially as third. So there's no real way for you to lock out a leopard out of wheat. There's no real way to lock him out of ore, so you might as well not give him the best of both worlds. This scenario, I think.
Okay, yeah. Another way you could do that is by placing on the 3-6-11 with the double wheat. However, it's very difficult to really predict your strategy, as their Leopard will have a lot of possibilities. Like if you place on 3-6-11, the 5-9-10 will be left open. You could combine that with 4-3-11. It's not an amazing setup for sure. Could also go 9-4-11 or 9-10-11. Like it won't be a really good setup for the Leopard, but it might also lead to some more risk you're taking, because players without, especially in fourth position, like if you don't have a really strong setup, you often see players going for creative ways of trying to, like if I do this, maybe I potentially win this game, and they can really screw up what you had in mind. I feel like 5-9-10 is really solid pick. It's like for sure good. A 3-6-11 with 4-wheat sheep is, as well as 4-3-6-11 with 3-6-11 with the double wheat, that you don't have a port available. I think the 3-for-1 port is really important, as we established earlier. Like having ports on this board is really key. So I would still go with the 5-9-10 here.
Absolutely. I think the point about ports made earlier is definitely the one that would make me gravitate towards 5-9-10, especially the fact that you have two ports and one of them is unlikely to be contested, because all you need is a single row to protect it. So it's something that would heavily weigh into the decision, for sure.
And YoungNaijah decided to place on the 5-9-10, as we expected him to do. So, up for the really interesting fourth position. Would you go double or wheat sheep on this? Or maybe it's more of a sheep or wheat strategy with an abundance of sheep on this board and not that much ore and wheat.
Would that be consider it when I first glanced at the board and I saw what was left for the Leopard. Definitely the kind of the 6-3-11, 10-9-11 maybe. Just throw the caution to the wind and let's play full or wheat sheep here, and what happens, it does come to mind. It's not often that you get that kind of a setup left for you towards the very end, but given the low wheat, I suppose that's the reason why it's left. And can it be successful? Yeah, potentially. However, your hand will be flooded, and I do mean flooded with sheep. Nobody will want your sheep. So you're not really going to get any trades. You're not really going to be selling your wheat necessarily because you need it yourself, and ore is always valuable. So I definitely, while it's enticing to place that way, run into some trouble down the road, especially given that other players might have resources to cut you off and make your life very, very difficult down the road.
Yeah. So you'll have an imbalance. Like I feel like wherever you're going to place, like outside of 5-10-2 and 4-3-11, you'll have a really high sheep number. For all 3 hex spots, of course, and therefore I think you'll do good by grabbing a port. Accessible ports could be the 4-3-11 going to the sheep port. I'd say that could be a really interesting strategy, like 4-3-11 6-9-3 would be available. You grab all 5 resources, and maybe the fastest way to go to the sheep port. I actually really like that idea. You could also do something like use the 934. I feel like that's a really strong setup going to the wood board. There are not that many spots that work well with a high wood spot right now. You could do 10-5-2. It's probably the best spot to get a high wood number. Not really strong, although you do get the or wheat combi. There's also a spot I really like is the 6-5-12, placing towards the 9 ore. The risk with that is that you probably want to take some road material to get to the 9 ore, and you also want more wheat, so that's going to be impossible. So usually I like these type of setups, but not on this board, and it will also be really difficult to get a board that way. So not what I would do. I think 369 and 4311 is the type of setup I would go with if I were not going for the double or cheap here.
That could definitely work. I think I'll be honest, when I first glanced at it, it was one of those scenarios where I almost didn't see 4311. I just sort of ignored it in a way. But occasionally you can make these, what at the surface looks like a low producing spot work, provided that it gives you access to something like a very useful 2-to-1 port. In this case, there's a sheep port right there, which is going to be immensely useful since both 6511 and 692, 693 are available, giving you those 9 points of sheep, potentially converting that into whatever resources you actually need, and giving you the ability to play a fairly long game, whichever way you choose to go.
Yeah, but that's only offensively thinking. So like from a defensive perspective, you also want to see at what is your opponent going to do, the next placing opponent, and the best to predict is YoungNaijah right now, and he is looking for wheat, so he's probably wanting to get the 3-6-11 with the double wheat. Works really well with the high ore. I think it will be really difficult to stop him if he gets 5, 9, 10, 3-6-11 double wheat. So that would be a reason to go for the double or cheap here.
Yeah, that's true. That's another, again, a great point. Whenever you place, one of the things you always want to consider is, what am I leaving for my opponent? Because sometimes the setup that you take may look strong to you, but it allows your opponent that acts right after you to get something even stronger and even better. In which case, you're just preventing the inevitable, which is you're losing to somebody who's acting right after you.
And the Leopard decided to place in the respective order of 6-5-11 and 4-3-11. We haven't discussed this setup. This is really interesting, as he combines his ambitions for the sheep board while locking out YoungNaijah from the double wheat spot. I think this is really clever by their Leopard. Do you think this setup is strong enough for him to win the game?
Potentially, it's one of those cases where he's going to have brick. Probably will be a good trading resource to get onto that board. He's got both wheat numbers, which everybody will want, and he's starting with a Nor, so he could get a dev card that could help him get there, like a road building or Year of Plenty. So yeah, it has potential. I honestly, when I looked at it initially, I did not see this. So I must admit that their Leopard must be better than me, but I do really, really like it. As I mentioned earlier, trying to come up with a setup that gets you on 2 tiles of a rare resource and try to overcome that scarcity is something that former players will do, and their Leopard is definitely taking a hit in production with 4311, but he's picking up that second tile of wheat, which could prove to be monumental down the road when everybody's looking for wheat and he's the only one who's got both tiles of it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, I like the setup. I also think a an upside of it is that the settlements are relatively nearby. You don't gain any wood, but maybe with a monopoly or a road building, you might able to take longest road in that way. We'll have to see. I think it's very wishful thinking with Starshine on the
That was the
8-4-10.
term I was about to use.
Yeah. But let's see. It's YoungNaijah's second turn. He's looking for wheat for sure, so that would point him towards the 9, 10, 11. He could also go with something like 9, 4, 3, point towards the wood board, as he has the 10 wood as well. Play a road game potentially. It's a bit risky. He could also go 9, 4, 11. Well, 3DS max. What do you think is the right way to go for YoungNaijah here?
Like I said, I hate calling right and wrong in game of chance. But, yeah, I think that grabbing 9, 10, 11 is something that would be a consideration. The worry is that we're leaving 5, 10, 2 open, which could just get matched by Prinz der Sterne, who then can have essentially double brick, double wood, with the ability to expand endlessly. And since he's got that starting wheat, he doesn't really need to trade. He won't have sheep for a while, but I guess that could be overcome with trading. I would personally lean towards 9, 10, 11 here. But YoungNaijah is a very strong player, and one of the things that we'll see is that sometimes we'll come up with a setup that you don't expect them to come up with. Yet it works.
Yeah, would you also consider 2, 9, 10 here, as it's slightly lower wheat, which is a huge bummer, but then you don't leave open the potential strong setups for Prinz der Sterne, and you could go to the ore port having the 10 ore and the 9 ore, which
for sure
could help. You wouldn't have the brick, so it would be kind of difficult to get there, and maybe the 3-for-1 port with the high sheep is probably better than the ore port, so skip the idea of the ore port.
We did discuss this with YoungNaijah after the fact a little bit, and he did mention that 9, 10, 2 was a possibility, and is a possibility that he would consider a lot more strongly today than he did at the time. And his reasoning was exactly the one that he mentioned, which is to walk Prinz der Sterne out of any wheat, any ore, and make him place on something like a 6-3-9, and then force him to play a much more focused strategy, slowing him down potentially. But yes, that's definitely something that's in the minds of a strong player.
Yeah, what I've noticed from playing with YoungNaijah is that he is a huge fan of making defensive plays in the earlier placements, as he relies a lot on his trading capacity. If he makes it difficult for everyone, then trading becomes more important. I feel like that's the reasoning for that. Pretty much pointed out that the 2, 9, 10 isn't what he was gonna go for. I feel like it would be placement I would expect him to make if I were playing against him. I personally like the 9, 4, 11 the most, I think, although you'll have the risk of leaving open the 6, 9, 3. Yeah, that will probably be picked by Aspencer if that's left open, so that's not what you want.
That's tough. And it's unlikely that 693 necessarily is open, since Prinz der Sterne will probably start on just 692. He has that heat in order to get him that first settlement much more quickly and eliminate the need to trade. Yes, that is a possibility, and it's, again, as you said, YoungNaijah does like to rely on trading a lot, and this is where probably his skill comes in more so than many other players. And of course, his placements are often dictated with that assumption in mind. I guess we'll see what he does exactly.
Yeah, I like, there are a lot of spots that can give you various outs, and it really depends also on what differences the opponents will make. So let's just see what YoungNaijah was able to come up with. And YoungNaijah decided to go with the 9-4-3, playing without wheat and going towards the wood board. I really like the idea of having the wood board. I think 3-for-1 board is more relevant than the wood board here, as you also have a really high sheep number, and also the ore, which won't have used for quite a long time. It does leave open some interesting spots from Prinz der Sterne. He could make the defensive play here by going 10-9-2, making it super difficult for Aspencer to find a good placement. That could potentially be the 6-11, but would you go 10-9-2, or would you choose another spot and potentially raise towards the third spot?
That's an interesting one, because now Prinz der Sterne has by far the best brick on board. He definitely has wood. It's decent. He could start with a 10-9-11. He's got his wheats that he needs for that first settlement. He knows that Aspencer can only take one of those spots and is unlikely to race him for the other one, simply because they will not have, or she will not have, the brick to go along with her wood. So from purely a production and expansion standpoint, 10-9-11 makes perfect sense. Either 6-9-2 or more likely 5-10-2 will be open for sure. And because you are such a strong expansion threat, it's unlikely that you will be challenged for that spot in the first place, unless somehow the rest of the table colludes against you, which sometimes does happen. So you have to be a little bit aware of that. Like I said, this game was played in the time when the meta was not quite there yet. Collusion was a little bit less prevalent. Maybe in today's game, this could potentially get you into trouble. People could collude to try to get away from spots, but December, the safest play is for sure 10-9-11, without a doubt.
If I would, like, the spots I'm really considering is 10-9-2 and 5-10-2, and the reason for that is that 10-9-2 would lock out all the other free hack spots, and 5-10-2 I would go with because you would gain the double brick, double wood, and Aspencer would either place on the 10-9-11 or the 6-9-2, so you would place your road towards the 10-9-2 by placing on a 5. So you would place on the 5-10-2, point towards the other two spots, and whichever is left open, you can win the race to.
I guess the converse to that is just to say that you are going to start without a sheep.
Yeah.
Your opponents are a little bit savvy. They will charge you an arm and a leg that sheep when you do need it. Just something to keep in mind a little bit as you're placing there.
Yeah, and also a downside of it is that you would take your time by building either to the 10-9-2 or the 9-10-11, and YoungNaijah probably takes advantage of that by placing on your 3-for-1 board. So that's the risk here. So I feel like the safest option is definitely the 10-9-2. 9-10-11 is also great because you can have the best wheat, but I feel like leaving open so many strong spots for Aspencer is not really worth that 1 point of production.
I suppose one of the things to consider is that forcing somebody onto a very specific spot, while at the same time knowing that overall your setup is much stronger, is something that you might want to do. So that might make a decision, and I'm sure Prinz der Sterne thought about this. You taking 10-9-11 with your starting position at 4-10-8 is still better and stronger long term, and Spencer on 8-3-10 and then perhaps 6-9-2. That could also play into it. So you might be giving somebody what looks like a great spot. Yes, it has a lot of production in it, but maybe that spot is not going to be as powerful and not let you actually win the game in the long run. So even though you're taking it and it looks great, the other day it might not actually come to fruition and end up losing anyway.
That's very possible. Yes. Okay. I would like to see what Prinz der Sterne decided to go with, and it's going to be the 10-9-11. So Aspencer will have the potential and an interesting decision to make, going for 5-10-2 or 2-9-6. So I expect the placement to go on 2-6-9, and well, otherwise I would have also considered the 8-3. Okay, so Aspencer picks up the 2 sheep and a wheat at the start. You know, Prinz der Sterne started on or wheat sheep, as we see the 6 roll, and I find hand tracking to be the most important at the start of the game, as you will have a clear indication of where to steal from. I'm not sure what, like, it was played in December, as you mentioned, and how is the meta back then? Do you immediately start robbing the leader or the perceived leader at the start? Is there a perceived leader at this point of the game? Or would you go for the cards you need right away? So that's what we're about to find out. Prinz der Sterne going for the immediate quick death card and picks up a victory point. Would you have hold on to the city, or would you have gone for the development card here as well, being Prinz der Sterne?
I think that's a tough one. So if you read the table as one that will go after that rare wheat in your hand and it will rob you relentlessly for it until I get it, then getting a death card is probably the better play, because it essentially gets that rare card out of your hand. It announces to the table, I no longer have it. There's nothing to rob me for. Plus, it introduces that uncertainty of not having, you potentially having a knight, so people will be perhaps less likely to rob you as you can retaliate.
Yeah.
I think it totally depends on the situation.
Yeah. As it turns out, that YoungNaijah decided to steal from Prinz der Sterne anyways, and he picked up a brick. Now has a sheep and a brick in the hand. Their Leopard.
It was a guaranteed brick. Knew what he was getting.
Yeah.
I have no doubt he knew what he was getting.
Definitely. Brick is still very valuable. Maybe not for Prinz der Sterne, but definitely for all the other players. Their Leopard also got a death card.
Here's Aspencer is looking for the brick.
But you'll probably have to pay a high price for it. There are currently 3 players with a brick in hand, so might be okay. A wheat and a sheep for the brick. So that's a great deal for YoungNaijah picking up that wheat.
That was a deal.
Is it a free roll? I don't think so. Yeah. So Spencer may have traded away her only wheat. That's big risk in my opinion.
I think it's interesting. You can make arguments holding on to those rare cards and perhaps using them later on to leverage a better deal out of them when your opponent is a little more desperate for that card. Some players have a different philosophy and like to complete an action, even if that action is just building a road.
11 is a really interesting number for the Leopard. He could have gotten another development card here, decided to not go for one as he assumably has a knight in his hand. And then I don't see any reason to get another death card in his. So Prinz der Sterne is settlement in hand, but no space available yet. We'll be looking to pick up another wood to probably place on the 3-for-1 port over the 5-10-2. I think the 3-for-1 port is a higher priority for him than placing on the 5-10-2. Do you agree with that?
I think he's actually doing something really smart, and I've seen high-level people do this, where they will hold a road back, especially in a situation where you're not yet sure of which spot to go for. And in this case, he wasn't sure whether YoungNaijah was going to contest him for the 3-1 port. He wanted to make sure that that spot is available before he does anything. It will. So his actions were completely 100% dictated by what YoungNaijah does. If YoungNaijah decides to steal or try to steal that 3-for-1 port, then I'm sure that Prinz der Sterne would be going after that spot very hard. Firstly, if he sees YoungNaijah going for another spot, then he's a little bit more assurance that that spot is going to be available for him.
Yeah, I love this. What's it called? Year of Plenty by their Leopard, as he uses it for his 2 ungettable resources, the 2 wood. And now he's able to place on the sheep board, and that puts their Leopard as a quick early leader, I'd say.
It's definitely a very huge port for him. He is no longer relying on just about anybody to do whatever he wants. He can convert his 9 points sheep to whatever he's missing, cards, these, or perhaps other settlements.
Okay, interesting. So Prinz der Sterne decides, I'm gonna get the 5-10 now, and I'm gonna rely, or maybe they have a deal, or maybe he expects YoungNaijah to go for the 3-for-1 port on a 9 ore, which is a lot better for him personally, but it could be the better deal long term to try to place on the 3-for-1 port Prinz der Sterne also wants.
So this is one of those situations where we're probably looking to hurt Prinz der Sterne as YoungNaijah to try to take away that port from him, since he prioritized the F10-2, but at the same time, don't have wheat, and Prinz der Sterne has great settlement capability with brick and wood spots, both of which are either the same or slightly better than what you got. It'll be interesting to see who actually ends up winning the race to that 3-1 port, because I can tell you for a fact that YoungNaijah is looking to take away Prinz der Sterne's advantage by snatching the 3-1 from him.
Yeah. Okay. So Aspencer is looking to build a settlement on the 5-8, which will allow a lot for her. She's looking for that wheat she traded away to YoungNaijah, and Prinz der Sterne is not looking to give it up, so she'll have to pay a huge price for this. Okay, so we're gonna see a 4-for-1. I assume she has wood, brick, wheat in her hand right now, although I might be mistaken and she might like the brick. Prinz der Sterne already a road away from winning this race. YoungNaijah has 6 cards in hand, a bunch of sheep I'm sure of. He just rolled quite a while, offering an ore, so he has at least 2 sheep and 9, the ore. So quite far away from winning this race, if we don't look at his development card here. So he's really trying to make sure that, hey, your ore is blocked, I have an ore for you if you need one, if you need the development card to unblock it, but you have to pay a huge price for it. I like it. Leopard, not what he was looking for, as he has to toss in 2 brick and...
Very unfortunate.
Yeah. Where would you go with this block? The 8 brick or to another spot? Or maybe the 9 sheep, yeah, that also seems like a really good one.
You could be very egalitarian and just everybody at the same time.
Yeah, and also because you are the sheep master on this board, especially if you block the 9 sheep. Only Aspencer is a player with other sheep. And oh wow. Super quick city by their Leopard.
Jumps out definitely to a production lead.
Yeah. And also all the space available around him makes him really difficult to beat right now. 4 roll. Get some brick in the game. YoungNaijah is looking for that second brick, I'd say. Oh, he still needs a wood for the settlement. If he can't get this to go, I would probably concede to raise to Prinz der Sterne right here, as it's super risky to leave the guard for like either place a road to what then and likely losing that race, or holding cards in your hand with 8 cards in and rolling a 7. Yeah, I like this. Or I don't like it, but I agree with it.
That's correct. Definitely looking to try to snatch it. This turn wasn't able to get the deal. Let him do it.
Aspencer also got the settlement, perfect settlement. Quick block on. Oh wow. Okay, I didn't see this steal by Prinz der Sterne coming on. Maybe he's considering YoungNaijah as his threat for longest road.
He simply wants the ore.
Yeah, that can also be the case. However, it's very unlikely, I think, to steal the ore from YoungNaijah. Maybe he had 2, but still 2 out of 7.
9's rolled, so his hand is flooded with sheep and ore. So
okay, maybe he had more. Sense. Yeah, maybe he had more. Maybe the Leopard had a bunch of sheep. Interesting.
He knew exactly what their Leopard was holding, and I think it was
probably a bunch of sheep.
A bunch of sheep, and he might have had 2 brick. I remember.
Yeah. Okay.
He knew he wasn't going to get anything from the Leopard that he could use, and at least he gets a chance with it.
Yeah. Now an interesting decision. Would you try to go for city maximum, or do you get a dev card and place a road or out the road? Like he is going to place something.
One of the philosophies, or one of the approaches, I suppose, that I've heard of is to try to empty your hand in these situations, and getting that knight plus placing a road to a spot that's unlikely to be contested never be bad in this situation. It's not immediately, I can see.
Yeah, I personally really think going maximum for the city is what I find to be the best, because like if you don't get it now and you will be stuck on 5 settlements, that is when the phase of monopoly start to happen, like everyone being on 5-6 points. That's usually when people want to take out that final blow and win the game, and they are usually held on ore. I think on this board it can either be ore or wheat or something that rolls for quite a while at a row. Maybe a 9 rolls quite some time, and then people will steal a bunch of sheep. Can all happen. So that's my reasoning for not doing that. However, this could be correct in this case for sure as well.
So a 2 roll. I've heard is that you don't necessarily need to have the strongest wheat sheep setup to take army. So as long as you have some access to wheat and ore and sheep, you can make it work and win the army race. That could also be going through Prince's head.
Yeah. And by picking up that victory point at the start, he is potentially able to win the race to the largest army while taking longest road. So then he doesn't need the city to win.
That's right. So every victory point you pick up is essentially 1 less city for you to build later down the road.
Yeah.
Which can be huge in the later game.
Okay,
especially if you don't have access to both ore and wheat.
In that light, I think I agree with this move. Okay, so some other things going on right here. YoungNaijah being able to pick up that wood. I think it's very likely he is able to place on the 9 ore right now, or maybe he's still lacking a wheat.
He's definitely lacking a wheat, not making any.
At the idea he was able to 4 for 1 at last time. Or maybe he's able to... I'm not sure. Okay, so No placement here done here by YoungNaijah. Their Leopard, 6 cards in hand. Gets another development card, trying to raise Prinz der Sterne for the largest army. I like this move for sure.
Definitely has the best setup for it.
Yeah.
Largest army should, in theory, be one of his victory conditions that he should be going after quite hard.
Yeah, I think so as well. Okay, 1-for-1 deal. I feel like Aspencer is currently in 4th place, so doing deals with her is the right way to go. Although it can very quickly turn if she gets a city on the 8-10-3. A really strong spot, especially with the 3-for-1 port nearby. And the abundance of sheep.
Aspencer getting a city should be quite a high priority here.
Yeah. That she gets a brick. So 2 roads and a settlement, I assume. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So that makes the 8 wood, which immediately rolls a really high priority, potentially to block, and also it will give her a free card or a bunch of wood. I assume a free card, because flags 4 wheat and brick, or they are low in production. So the 5 rolled. YoungNaijah was able to pick up 4 cards since last turn, so perhaps he can now build a settlement without making a trade. Okay, 2-for-1 for wheat, and we see the settlement being placed down by YoungNaijah. Was maybe trying to get another wood to be able to do a road, or maybe another 2-for-1 into wheat for a development card. Do we have any information on what development cards the Leopard and YoungNaijah might have? Okay,
so unfortunately, we kind of know that based on glitch that's Catan Universe. So we do know that their Leopard has 2 victory points. It's a little bit unfortunate. That glitch is still in the game. It kind of spoils his plan could be. YoungNaijah does have a playable card. We don't know exactly what it is. It's unlikely to be a knight, although it could be. The reason I say that is because he has 2 sources of sheep. Might simply be leaving the robber on the 5, since he doesn't really care too much about the 5. Or it could be Year of Plenty, road building, or Monopoly. But it's almost certainly not a 3 points. And again, like I said, the glitch betrays his hand a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, here's some. Okay, we see another 2-for-1 between Aspencer and YoungNaijah, and brick is valuable for Aspencer. I know the 8 has rolled at least twice, so Aspencer will now have a road and 3 other wood in hand. Potentially some other cards. I think I saw the 5 rolled by YoungNaijah, so another wood. About the other 2 cards, I'm uncertain. For YoungNaijah, picking up that wood is quite good, as he is able to turn it into wheat with the wood port. Who would you say is in the lead right now?
The lead, it's tough. I think both the Sterne and their Leopard are definitely up there. They're both more or less ahead in production. I think one is ahead of the other. The math quickly on this, but given that know that Prinz der Sterne has the knight, he's going to block less for sure. And he's most likely going to get another settlement very, very shortly. So I think Prinz der Sterne at the moment would be in the lead.
Ooh, picking up that sheep right in time for Prinz der Sterne. He could also do 3-for-1, get ore. Gonna see if someone wants that brick. Potentially Aspencer wants one. Gets a wood out of it. I don't think it really does much. Okay, no, I think I agree with Also, a death card could have been possible, however he's currently leading in the race to army, so I agree with this move. Now he can really focus on getting 2 more knights and winning the race to largest army, and he's done. However, that's that's a lot easier said than done, of course, because YoungNaijah could really prevent him from connecting, and also might have a knight and be able to win the race for the largest army. So let's see what he decides to do. Okay, he picks up wheat, wants to get a city. Doesn't play a death card, it seems like. No, okay. Like this move by YoungNaijah.
Getting a city is very, very powerful here. As we mentioned earlier, production is king on these type of boards, and upping your production by essentially doubling the number of cards you're picking up for initial settlements. Huge.
Okay. Also a settlement by Aspencer on the wheat board. Wheat board doesn't do that much, but getting slightly more production and another victory point is quite helpful. Also a death card, so wow. Okay, he could use the knight here and try to go up in the army race. I don't think that's what I would go for. I like this suggestion. He could get a wood by Aspencer. Aspencer might not think it's that bad to trade with Prinz der Sterne, however, does seem like it. Okay, so he's gonna go for another development card. I think this is the right move. Instead of going for the 2 roads, prevent YoungNaijah from being able to cut him off. Do you think so as well?
I definitely agree not to go for road yet, especially considering that in situations where you become the double threat, meaning threatening both army and road, can collude. Table will collude, in fact, but take that away from you. So not appearing as much of a threat too early is definitely the way to go here.
However, aren't the other players already too late by not colluding on Prinz der Sterne? Like, how do they take largest army, and how do they prevent him from taking longest road?
I think if he had the largest army in hand, and he had a chance to connect the longest road, I think he would. However, he didn't have essentially either one really locked up. He would need to then somehow keep that road while at the same time playing his knights orbits in a row. And in 3 orbits, a lot can happen in 3 orbits. A lot of collusion can happen in 3 orbits. For people to take at least one of those victory conditions away from you, more likely the road. So I think it's a good choice on Prinz der Sterne.
Okay, let's see what happens here. Spencer is able to place a knight and steal from Prinz der Sterne, picking up the rare brick for her, or at least the super valuable brick. And what he is able to do with it. He wants to take longest road. Might have a victory point in hand. So that's a downside for Prinz der Sterne, as Aspencer is going for longest road right now. He is able to block the 5 again. Leopard on 7 points by placing on the 6-12 last turn. Still don't know the last card by YoungNaijah. Could be a monopoly.
It's always the threat. It gets kept in for this long.
So if the 10 rolls a couple times, then he might be able to do something. However, if the 10 rolls, Prinz der Sterne will be able to use his ore into building a city or getting some development cards, so he wouldn't get too much out of it. Maybe he must hope for another card, another number like 11 to steal from the Leopard. We see a 6, so there's a bunch of sheep in the game. So if he has a monopoly, then he might have to do it on sheep and use the 3-for-1 board.
Definitely consideration. I think in ideal world, he would be calling monopoly on wheat, especially if a couple of 3s and a couple of 11s roll right before he acts.
Yeah.
That the Leopard's hand is flooded with wheat, and given that he is on the strongest ore board, he can potentially build a city or two.
I don't see anyone trading an ore here. Okay, getting another development card here. Pick up a knight. Oh, he gets a victory point. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So then he would only need a city and a development card to win the game here.
And it's a single city.
Yeah.
Like earlier, every victory point is essentially one less city for you to build. So he just effectively built cities with 2 development cards, which is the best case scenario.
Yeah. Okay. We have seen 1 year of plenty. I don't think we've seen a road building yet, so that could be potential for YoungNaijah. I think if he had road building, he would use it to potentially cut off Prinz der Sterne here. So I'm going to say he has a monopoly in hand. A monopoly is considered to be the strongest, however, on this board. I feel like it's a lot less strong because the ore and the wheat are usually going to be spent right away. So you could do a really high sheep one, but yeah. You just gotta get a bunch of sheep and then port it. And you want to be able to steal from Prinz der Sterne, I'd say, as he is the player closest to winning. However, Aspencer might actually be on 9 victory points right now.
The difficulty with Prinz der Sterne acting right before you is that he gets to spend his cards before it's your turn to monopoly anything. An ideal scenario, you would be acting right before him if you had a monopoly.
Yeah, exactly.
Hurt him the most.
I did make a mistake though. Like Aspencer can be at 8 victory points, not at 9, as we knew that their Leopard has 2 victory points and Prinz der Sterne has 2 of them as well. The Leopard will have an interesting turn, as he has 15 cards and probably a bunch of sheep and the sheep board.
I believe it was at least 10 sheep.
At least 10 sheep. Correctly. Wow.
At least 10 sheep.
Would you go for a city here on the 4-3-11?
So this is the hard part, and I don't really know how the math works out here off my head. There are 2 considerations. One is get development cards and try to keep up in the army race with Prinz der Sterne. What that does is twofold. One, it forces Prinz der Sterne to buy more dev cards as opposed to save up for the city. And 2, it perhaps lets you win the race in the end, netting you those 2 points that you're missing. Conversely, since we know that Leopard already has 2 VPs in hand, maybe he feels that he doesn't need the army race, which could potentially be very costly to him. And it's more efficient for him to go for simply the cities and an extra settlement to try to win, since he's already at 7 points.
And also something that we could consider is that their Leopard also has a really good chance of taking longest road. He connects his 2 settlement spaces, then he will be on 7 roads taking the longest road. As he goes for the city, puts him on 8, 3 roads away from the win right now. But I assume Aspencer is gonna take care of that. Do you think Aspencer has 8 victory points right now, or?
It's hard to say. I think we know that she does not have a playable development card. What that card is difficult to determine at the moment.
So we know there's a bunch of sheep, there's a bunch of wood. So that explains 5 of the cards. And let's find out what the others are. If the Leopard had 10 sheep in hand, then Spencer must have more sheep as well. So say there's 6 sheep, 3 wood, I think a wheat. No. Okay, well, okay. So another development card. Look for. If she picks up a knight and she has a knight in hand, I would place one here, trying to contest Prince's turn for army.
That's a good idea. I agree with that.
Let's see, maybe she tries to hold it for the city. She also needs the city. And that would play into the cards of YoungNaijah, who I assume has a monopoly.
These army and rogue races going is usually important. That doesn't let character just run away with the game. This is going to spend the resources on that race, as opposed to sitting up that you really don't want.
Okay, we see the development card by Aspencer, and she ends her turn not placing anything interesting. Must have the potential to do something, but decided to not go for it. Also, she took quite a while in this turn, so she might have been card counting, as she might have a monopoly as well. You're free, so there's a bunch of wheat in the game. So that would be a great monopoly for YoungNaijah. You wouldn't be able to target Prince's turn with it. However, a free wheat is just awesome for him, as he also picked up a bunch of wood.
He must be considering whether monopolizing wheat at the moment is enough of an advantage to close out the game. That's usually what you want to do. A monopoly. You want to get so far ahead that opponents are not able to catch up.
So YoungNaijah is trying to get the longest road here by trying to make a trade. I think this is the right move to go for. I'm not sure if it would be a good move for anyone to help him. Purple could be at 9. Well, we know that's not the case. I think Prince's turn already has that knowledge.
This is definitely where the knowledge that their Leopard has 2 victory points comes into play. It's Prince's turn be more or less certain that he is certain that Aspencer does not have 9. At best, is sitting at 8.
However, I think it's the right move by YoungNaijah to use that argument to make trades, as it will it's more likely to help him than to hurt him. So I like that.
One of the things you'll see with players doing is that they will essentially force you to build their own longest road for them. Sometimes they're not even on that much brick and that much wood, and then I'll end up with a really long road, and then you wonder how that happened. Usually it's by scaring you into giving them that road as a way to prevent someone else from winning.
Yeah. Also, what I find really fun to do is, when I'm not necessarily going for the longest road, try to feed the 2 players who are going for the longest road as many roads as possible in return for good cards, and then try to win on the back of them racing and spending cards towards not producing spots and no point rewarding accomplishment.
Absolutely, that's one of the best ways.
Okay, so he needs another brick. They probably said in the voice chat, hey, if you place down the roads and show me that you are going for the road and not going to spend it on other stuff, we can make a deal. Or perhaps I'm mistaken, and he just did it. He wanted to do it anyways.
This turn is effectively making a decision to YoungNaijah at 8 points, with 8 for a single war, counting on the fact that he cannot get to 10 before his turn does.
He actually gets a 1-for-1 here with Prinz der Sterne. Interesting. Expensive. Very expensive.
Very expensive road.
Yeah, so Prinz der Sterne knows probably that Aspencer isn't as big of a threat and willing to make this trade with YoungNaijah. But YoungNaijah doesn't. So he just basically threw away 4 rare ore to get the roads, while there was no immediate threat of losing the game. So I think that was very clever by Prince's turn.
Definitely taking advantage of what you know about their Leopard's hand and what you know about your own hand into play here.
Yeah. Something I find to be very difficult in these type of voice chat games is when you have development cards, it's really difficult to hide what development cards you have. Like, apparently the other players don't know that Prince's turn has 2 victory points in his hand. Like, you often come in situations that people are going to say, do we have 2 monos, do we have 2 this or that, and then like how do you keep that information hidden? Okay.
One of the
Spencer.
approaches I've heard is to say they're always victory points. So no matter how many cards you hold, they're all victory points.
Yeah.
You can just let everybody know that whatever cards I hold, they're always victory points.
Okay. I have a rule for myself to technically never lie about what development cards I have, so maybe that makes it more difficult for me.
Yeah, that could be definitely more difficult. I know of players, good players, that do lie about what they hold. Or at the very least, they will phrase things in a way that makes it very difficult to deduce exactly what they mean.
Yeah, that's what I do as well. Okay,
of course, I'm more savvy approach to get clarification.
So Prince's turn has army locked up.
Yes. Nobody's even close.
Well, Spencer might be, but not too close.
That's true, but of course, Aspencer is orbits behind.
Yeah.
This turn can keep playing knight. Potentially
Spencer,
can keep buying knights.
Yeah, Prince's turn has the control over the army. So he actually only needs 1 other victory point, which he's probably looking to get from a city, as I'm going to assume there are no victory points left in the deck. Or he could get it by taking Longest Road, which will be fairly difficult as YoungNaijah and Aspencer are going for Longest Road pretty hard.
I don't think a road is in this turns head whatsoever at the moment. It's just to require so many resources. In this case, you're looking at 7 roads. You might as well invest those resources into doing a city for yourself. In fact, I don't even know where he could get enough space to build that long of a road. I don't see a stretch that's going to be long enough for that. So at this point, it has to save for a city. There's no other option.
Okay, let's see what Spencer is. I'm going to assume for sure going to take Longest Road this turn, as she seems to be very invested into it and could take it, so why not? A reason to not take it is that YoungNaijah doesn't have the immediate threat of winning the game, so it's not a bad thing if he has it right now. Ooh, Monopoly. So their Leopard will have a soft orbit without those weeds. Now we're going to see a city by Aspencer, I assume. 5 cards, so still 3 cards left. Maybe able to do a road? No? Okay. So this puts her on 7 victory points. With space available for a settlement and potential to take Longest Road. Interesting. Okay. So Prince's turn is all in for the city game plan. Will he activate a knight? He doesn't really have to considering largest army. He isn't blocked. I would keep my my knight here.
Conservation, of course, is that he gets a 50-50 chance at that. And their Leopard is holding as well. He could get himself much closer to getting.
Okay, he's gonna go for it. Oh, actually stealing from YoungNaijah.
That is interesting.
is it still a possibility that YoungNaijah has a victory point, or have we already established? Like, I've been very keen towards him not having one, but is that still possible?
No, I don't think so. I think we've seen that it's a playable card, so it can't be a victory point. And that he's thinking this long, almost always know that it isn't.
So with the 6 rolled, we know there is at least 5 sheep into the game. We know there is 4 weeds.
A 3 rolled on Prinz der Sterne's turn, so Aspencer and Leopard both got.
Okay.
YoungNaijah is holding 4 woods that he can put for whatever he needs. I think it's just a matter of math. He wants to hold the monopoly here.
Yeah. So how does YoungNaijah win? Does he get a city? Does he get? He probably maintains longest road. Victory points are unavailable. City and a road settlement or double city? What would be the way to go here?
It's in this monopoly, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, he gets the sheep. Leopard is not happy with the monopolies this game for sure. Okay, so he's gonna go for road settlement and probably another road settlement, maintaining longest road. Works better with that. Or he could go for road settlement and a city. Then the 9 must roll, of course.
One thing to keep in mind is that Prinz der Sterne is just simple 10 away winning.
Yeah.
In the win.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Also, Aspencer is a road settlement. No. YoungNaijah just built 2 roads. So Aspencer is 3 roads and a settlement away. So it's technically possible. Very unlikely it happens. So probably wins is what YoungNaijah says here. Makes sense.
It doesn't make sense. I think it's interesting that the Leopard, I don't believe he played his open card on his turn. Now Aspencer has, I believe, what was a playable card as well, and she chose not to play it either, which is interesting if you know that blue is likely a roll away from.
So if that's a playable development card by Aspencer, then and their Leopard decided to not use any development card, then we must assume that's another victory point by their Leopard. Monopolies are out of the game. Road buildings, he would have tried to cut off Aspencer here. I'd say you have plenty. You would probably find use for it. And a knight, why wouldn't you unblock your own spot? And that's the 10, and that's the game. Wow. Ooh, almost a misclick. So Prinz der Sterne is going to win King of Catan Season 5. So yeah, congratulations.
Very well done.
Yeah, for sure.
Very well done. Their Leopard did not have a VP. Aspencer did not have the 5th VP.
Oh wow! What were the cards?
Well, they were holding. Must have been road buildings.
Yeah, but if they had road building, they would have played it right.
Not necessarily. You can use road building at the end to get that last settlement, because you kind of want to keep the road race going between Aspencer and YoungNaijah, perhaps. So it's not in his best interest to have Aspencer.
I don't think 943 is a bad pick for sure. Like I said earlier on in the commentary, I would go either 943 or 2910 there. I think both picks are both picks are awkward, and it's whatever you prefer, I'd say.
I don't think good and bad is a relative term here.
Yeah,
make a lot of things work on this board, and
that's true.
Staking the setup that he did maybe moved him off the radar for the strongest position, or would not consider him to be in the strongest position. Maybe a few robber placements not on him, particularly because they didn't perceive him as being the largest threat. It could also play into his decision.
What I've seen from like I've done some testing with playing without wheat, and what I noticed about it is that playing on high wheat boards actually makes it much more likely for you to win without wheat. And on this low wheat board, I feel like it's pretty tough to win. Although YoungNaijah got quite far.
Ore and wheat have that property where if you're the only one who's not on that resource and everyone else is on a lot of that resource, just lose. Whereas if everyone has fairly mediocre access to that resource, and you're not on it, then you may be finding ways to compensate for it, ways that you fly under the radar, but at the same time win at the end of the day.
Thank you for commentating with me, 3DS Max. Congratulations to Prinz der Sterne, or currently he's known as Starshine, for winning this game. And I also think Aspencer, YoungNaijah, and their Leopard had a really strong run. Like qualifying for these types of playoffs is super difficult right now, and also winning that semi-final is it's super tough. So well done to them, and we'll see you on the next video.